that optimized state that I was describing that's happening in meditation starts to become the new normal. And so this plays out as improvements in memory and concentration and creativity and all of these metrics by which we look at how well are we performing mentally. What's causing that? You are literally changing the brain chemistry.
Jillian and Michael, welcome to the Collective Institute of Ideas. It's such a privilege to have you both, the founders of the London Meditation Centre. Several people over the years have talked about meditation. I don't know which moment it was, but it was like, right, I'm going to do this. Went over to your centre in London. What an experience it's been. You've got quite the reputation. I'd love to hear more about your journey to this moment.
I learned this technique of Vedic meditation that we teach over 25 years ago. I was working in a business environment, responsible for setting up a publishing division of this international publisher that I was working for. I was stressed, tired, spending a lot of time on a plane, always jet lagged. I wasn't feeling very happy. I was working very hard and playing quite hard as well. It just wasn't looking very sustainable. Some signals. So I came to meditation because this was way before apps and any of that kind of stuff. This was at a time when I didn't know anybody who was meditating. I learned through a recommendation of somebody who'd been a bit of a business mentor to me and a father of one of my friends. He just was somebody who I really respected. I didn't think of him as a meditator. He had tried all sorts of things to deal with his insomnia. He'd had a long time of trying to find something that worked. Nothing had really clicked. And then he learned Vedic meditation and he started sleeping. That was interesting for me. So I learned. I was a bit of a step into the unknown. I came to it with some preconceived ideas about what I thought meditation was going to be like. And it wasn't like that at all. It was very easy and it wasn't weird. There was a lot of science behind it. And maybe we can talk a little bit about that. That was very reassuring for me. I started to notice changes very quickly. Often people will say, how long do you have to do this before you notice a shift? And actually, it's really days and weeks and months when you start to notice. It happens very fast. I was waking up before my alarm clock. I had more energy throughout the day. I was feeling less anxious. That was a big thing for me. I had been feeling pretty overwhelmed by everything that I had on, and that was changing. And I just was happier. I was just a lot more smiley, enjoying what I was doing. It was helping me a lot with the jet lag. That was a really big change. But then I continued working in business. I moved to Paris and then to London, which is where we're based today. And then I decided I wanted a break from full-on corporate environment. And that's when I met up with my meditation teacher and ended up being in Flagstaff, Arizona, up in the high Arizona near the Grand Canyon for nearly a year and a half. And I trained one-on-one, which was an interesting experience in itself, to become a teacher of Vedic meditation. And then I came out of that kind of mountain retreat in 2003, was it? Yeah, 2003. And I've been teaching meditation since then, but we actually started teaching full-time in 2008.
My story is somewhat similar, except that I had tried a lot of stuff. I first tried to meditate when I was at university. I had a professor who was an old hippie, and he wanted us to do it and gave us time but no instruction. And I tried, and I didn't really have any success, but I felt there was something to it. And then I started doing a search. I did yoga. I did my first sun salutation in 1987, long before yoga was the thing that it is today. I was living in the Midwest, but then moved to Seattle for graduate school. So I became West Coast, and there's a whole thing. I did drum circles, and I did therapy, and I did all sorts of things in an attempt to find some calm and some clarity inside. I'm not sure from the outside, I hope I didn't look like a disaster, but inside I didn't feel stable. I didn't feel whole. I didn't feel complete. I was really on a search. I then tried to find that in my career and really threw myself into a business career doing a number of different things. I ended up, coincidentally, also in publishing, corporate environment, very full on entertainment publications. So it had the intensity of the entertainment business and the publishing business together. It was exciting and it was really hard work. I was working for some very intense and working with some super intense people. And I was not feeling great. And I was exercising intensely, and I was out and partying and trying to find some way to blow off steam, and it wasn't really working. And then a friend learned to meditate. And even in LA at this time, meditation was not really out there. But I saw a huge change in her. She calmed down and she made some big life decisions. And I thought, okay, something's going on for this person. Maybe I should check it out. And I went to a talk and I really liked it. There was science and there was this discussion about meditation being easy and enjoyable. I think so many people, and certainly I did not think that about meditation, that it would be something that I looked forward to doing. It always seemed like something super intense people had to be very disciplined about. And so I got interested. I thought, okay, well, I'll give it a try. I jumped in, and right away it was different. I had been trying to do stuff and feeling like a bad meditator for more than 10 years. And I did this. I knew what I was doing. The instruction was really clear. But also, as Jillian was saying, I really felt an impact. I was sleeping differently. I was feeling focused in a way that was really positive. I was calmer inside. I didn't have that background vibration of anxiety that I'd been living with for so long. And other people were noticing the difference as well. And I thought, okay, this is worthwhile. I like it and something's happening. And so I continued forward. And then I decided to train as a teacher. That was a different program than Jillian. It was about 2.5 years of study, culminating in 3.5 months full-time in residence, first in India, and then I was in the same area in northern Arizona where our teacher was. So we've been teaching full-time since 2008. We formed London Meditation Center and also New York Meditation Center. So we're back and forth.
I'm hearing a lot from both of your stories, the word ambition and busy, work hard, play hard. There's so much of life, particularly with the fact that we live digital life now. You can't fully remove yourself from the pulls of life. It's obviously rooted you both. Do you find it hard? People say, okay, what's it done to you? Do you find it hard to explain that?
Yes, it's such a big topic because people will say, okay, is meditation going to help me with my high blood pressure? And I'll say, yes. Is meditation going to help with my migraines? Yes. Is meditation going to help me sleep better? Yes. Is meditation going to help me on my fertility journey? Yes. Is meditation going to lead me in the direction of being less reliant on medication to get through the day? Yes. The list goes on, and it is so all-encompassing. It's affecting every aspect of our life, and the reason it's affecting every aspect of our life is because we're getting to the baseline of who you are. You know, when you practice Vedic meditation, you're not simply working at the level of the body. There's all sorts of things we can do at the level of the body. We can stretch the body, we can exercise, we can sit in cold plunges, we can do all sorts of things that will have an effect on the nervous system at that level. And then there's things that you can do at the level of the mind. You know, you can try to think certain thoughts and not think other thoughts, or you can try to put attention on certain things and not other things. You can work at that cognitive level. And those things all have some value. What we do in Vedic meditation is we go deeper. So we go beyond the mind and we step beyond thinking itself, and we experience consciousness, an state of being in that pure state. It's a state where it's you minus your thoughts. It's just that baseline of who you are. You're awake inside, and yet you're really very deeply rested. And the research is really clear on this. 20 minutes of sitting down and doing Vedic meditation on the train. I was meditating on the tube the other day here in London. I was resting my nervous system many times deeper than sleep. And that rest is so important for us on so many levels, because you get all that energy, but also you reset the nervous system and you come back into balance and you clear out all of the muck and the stuff that's built up over the years, all of those stresses and toxicity and all that stuff that we don't want in our system that just gets in the way of us being who we want to be. I think people can relate to the fact that there's something deeper than all of this noise that's going on in their head. And so how do you find that? How do you get to that? And then that's watering a plant. Everything that grows from there is going to be affected. Once you start to get into what is it for somebody, why would you be thinking about something like this? Then we can really hone in on this is how meditation is going to impact that. And so much of it has to do with the fact that this is unprecedented rest. There's just nothing else you can do that's going to give you that rest that quickly.
Because some people say, my dad's, singing is my meditation, or people are like, yeah, football's my meditation. It's amazing because it has like a meditative impact, but it's just not it. For me, it's been very different. I play a lot of tennis, and there are similarities, but it is just different. One thing that's interesting to think about is I like many people have a very busy brain, always thinking. And Michael, you did an amazing job in the room by really the way you hone in on people's questions is extraordinary. Your ability to listen and really hit the point about these questions people have. And for me, what was really interesting, Jillian, is this the idea that there's no such thing as a bad meditation, because other meditations I've had quite primitive other experiences of meditation before, but it was very much black or white. You're either doing it or you're not. You're there or you're not. You're either completely engaged with thinking about nothing, or you're being you're being a bad person. If you're competitive, being not doing it right, you feel like a bad person. That's just not where you want to be. Whereas this one, let's go into what Vedic meditation is and how the pragmatics work, and then I'd love to hear about your course and what that looks like for people.
So this is different than other types of meditation. And I very much had the experience of what you're saying, of trying to meditate, actually not getting clear instruction, but having this idea, meditation is worthwhile, so sit down, close my eyes, and try to experience or achieve some internal state, which if you had asked me to verbalize that, I couldn't have. I could not have told you what I was trying to make happen, but I just had this sense something's supposed to be happening, and so I'm going to try and get somewhere other than where I am now, and trying to think yourself into fewer thoughts. You're in a catch-22 from the very beginning. So often the idea is silence the mind, sit down, slam your eyes shut, grit your teeth, and don't think, and don't think, and don't think, and don't think, and oh no, don't think, because God, that's another thought. And you are in this loop that gets really frustrating. The mind is designed to move. In Vedic meditation, we take advantage of this. Why is the mind moving? Where is it going? It is looking for what is interesting. It's trying to find a state of happiness. This is what all of our thinking is about. All of our thinking is this hunt for happiness. And in Vedic meditation, you learn two things. You learn a mantra. This is a very simple sound. It has no intended meaning. It's personalized for the student by the teacher. That's one of our jobs, is to choose the right sound for the particular person. You think that silently inside the mind. So you sit in a chair comfortably. You don't have to be cross-legged in the middle of the floor or something. You sit comfortably, you lean back, you close your eyes, and you begin to repeat silently inside this little resonant, mellifluous sound. And it begins to get more quiet inside. It starts to get more subtle. It self-refines. At the same time, the mantra is fascinating. It holds that promise of happiness for the mind. And so the mind begins to move toward it. And the mantra is getting more quiet, and the mind is following it down. And the mantra gets so subtle that it disappears, and the mind is dropped into this state of no mantra and no thought. Just pure awareness. This is this field that Jillian was talking about. You without thought, your baseline, your source. And then the first thing often that happens is you think, aha, this is it. And then it's not it anymore. You're back to thinking. But what we teach you is how to pick up the mantra and follow it down again. And you go through that cycle several times in each meditation. And that is absolutely correct. So in this technique, thinking is not a problem. We don't try to control the mind. We don't fight against it. The mind is our friend. We offer up what it wants. Of course, other thoughts come, and we get into great detail on the course about why that is and the importance of it. But the biggest baseline instruction in this technique is be easy and be effortless. And that makes it such a pleasure compared to most things that call themselves meditation, and really most anything else that we do in life that requires effort and hard work and often some degree of control. And here it's really about let it go, let the mantra do its work, let nature step in and take over. And that will deliver, Arthur, as you were saying, a meditation that is always good. If you stay out of the way, if you let nature take the lead, you're going to have the meditation that you need. It will feel different every time. Fantastic.
I'm going to quickly interject here because there's something here which is counterintuitive, right? There we are. We want a lot. How do you get things alive? You move towards it. You do action, la-di-da. There's something quite counterintuitive about just like moving away from that, right? You're completely taking a step back. I've got a friend he's an architect. He's remarkably calm. He's so busy. He's got a team. And the other day, he's so present and engaged and be able to invest in other people. And I said to him, dude, like, how do you do it? Seriously. Tell me, what are you taking? Give me some. And he said, it's funny, Arthur, because 2 or 3 years ago, I started to tell myself to care less about outcomes. And I've heard this before with a friend whose business reached a certain size that they didn't need these different clients that were quite difficult. And they invited their clients to be referred elsewhere, and they've just seen so much success follow from that, just caring less. Anyway, I thought it was quite interesting, but please continue. We want to hear about the structure of all of this.
I think it's an interesting point that you raise, because I think we get trained from a very early age that success is commensurate with effort, and the harder you try, the more successful you're going to be. It trips us up a little bit when we learn meditation, because this is a technique of not trying. The only thing you can do wrong is to try to get in there and make something happen. And it's something that becomes quite deeply ingrained, that I have to put a lot of effort and a lot of focus and control in there in order to lock in and get a result. There's a cost to that, because what it does is it says, okay, this is my goal. I'm very set in my way about how that's going to play out. It's going to happen with these people on this time frame over this particular scenario. Boom, right, let's go. Humans have an incredible capacity to make things happen. You get single-minded, you get locked in, and you go for it and get out of their way because they're coming. And yet what that does is it says, right, it's this way. It's my way, no other way. So there's a cost to that, because maybe actually we needed to just tweak a little bit, or we needed to adjust, or we needed to take in something that's happening over here, but no, not available for that, because in order to make this happen, I'm going this way. It's a very limiting way actually to live our life, because it means then that we are expending a lot of effort. So that's exhausting. It means that we're missing out on taking in any new cues from nature, because no, it's this way. When actually some client over here might give you some interesting perspective and you think, oh gosh, actually they're onto something. We need to just adjust a little bit here. But no, I'm not available for that. I'm focused, I'm on it, I'm committed, I'm working hard, boom. But actually it's very narrow. I'm on this track. When people learn to meditate, things broaden out. This is what stress does. It makes things very small. Our responses are small and petty. Our ability to think outside the box is not there. Everything narrows down. Now, when you take all that away, then your whole perspective is broadening. It's like the lens on the camera is going from really narrow and broadening out. I can pick all this up in my nervous system because it's not chock-a-block with noisy, stressy, irrelevant thinking. So it really changes the way we move through the world.
It's so funny because there's a book called Super Forecasters, which in essence it highlights that these people are obsessed about forecasting. So it's what they do more of as a hobby, but they outperform predictions compared to specialists. It's a very quick, easy read. But one of the interesting takeaways from the book is these people, they they change they're always changing their predictions based on new data, and they're changing their minds, and they do it very slightly, even if by a few percentage points. I go back to you very kindly send very informative emails. There was one on intuition the other day, and intuition is a funny one. I mean, what is intuition? It's your people say. Jeff Bezos, a man very much often quoted. He talks about this idea of like your gut feel. What does your gut say? But it's an amazing thing. And Michael, you talked a bit about that during our sessions. But if we're so caught up in thinking about that we know the answers, whereas if we go back a bit, of course we're going to be more open. So those linkages are quite interesting to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. The human brain is an amazing thing, and it is incredible at processing information, and there is too much information. You can't process it all. And these super predictors, they're taking subtle inputs and adjusting. How do they know which ones to pay attention to? I don't think because so many bits of information are coming in, and they pluck something and adjust their prediction as a result. How did they choose from all of those things? I wonder if we talk to them, if they might say, I don't know, I just felt it. I just felt this was the one to pay attention to. I just had the sense that this was going to impact my prediction in a different way. And of course we should exercise our intellect, and of course we should make comparisons, and of course you want to have goals and have a view of the future of your company or of your own life, and to be agile and to be willing to turn on a dime and to have that flexibility and adaptability so that when circumstances change, when new information of value comes in, you're not locked into some idea of how it was all going to go. That's always a recipe for disaster.
Funny because the word sense, people are overwhelmed by fear, and sometimes it like hits them on a day or a moment, and they're just so far away from their own sense of self and sense. So if we have that on one side of the spectrum, and then I guess someone who's like super connected to themselves, and you can very much feel that this energy. And I noticed it with people. I noticed it with people who meditate, that they're just connected with themselves in a way that doesn't rely on the external so much, and they're much more gathered, and they find it notably easier to connect with things that make them happy and authentic situations. So
I think that's a function of their state of consciousness, and that's a function of their capacity to ground themselves in that baseline that we were talking about. If I have to look for all of my information and my sense of who I am from the ever-changing chaotic world out there, or seemingly chaotic world, everything's out there, and I'm looking for my stability and my sense of who I am based on how many digits I've got in my bank account and what job titles I've got and how much education I've got and who I hang out with and all of these things. All of that is constantly in flux. If I am able to drop down into something that is baseline, stable, unchanging, it's the core of who I am. This is what the Vedic texts talk about, self-realization. It's like my individual self is realizing my universal baseline self. Then that's my reference point. I've settled down. And then I can come back out into this very busy, demanding world. But I'm not, discombobulated when something shifts because I've got my anchor overboard. I am grounded in something that is deeply settled and foundational and energizing and coherent, and it has infinite organizing. I can drop into that quantum level, and that's my baseline. And then it's not like meditators are sitting around just with their eyes closed, luxuriating in this sort of blissful state of whatever.
Yeah.
This is a technique for busy people. This is a technique to get that, plug in, and then get out there in the world and take all that adaptability and all that creativity and take it out, because boy, the world needs it right now.
Have you both heard the term
Yes.
flex? Okay, so I'm going to want you to flex. How many people have you got to meditate? I mean, it's hard to know, but go on.
Thousands and thousands and
Yeah,
thousands.
we must be starting to approach 10,000 people around the world.
Wow. Very different people I come across have done your course. I want to hit on that. So, go on, the pragmatics of this. Let's go into a little bit of the pragmatics and then your course.
In order to learn, you can go to our website, londonmeditationcenter.com or newyorkmeditationcenter.com. Even before that, actually, you can read Jillian's book. Do you have a copy of your book here? So this is called Why Meditate Because It Works. I'm going to try and get it here like that. Why Meditate Because It Works. You can get it preferably at your independent bookstore and, of course, online as well. It is fantastic. It's going to really introduce you to the ideas and the potentials of meditation. It's going to bust the myths, the misconceptions that people have. Then come to an introductory talk. That'll be one or the both of us talking in detail about how this technique works. And then we talk about the structure of the course. And what you do is you come along. This has to be taught in person. It is a simple technique. And it is subtle. And there needs to be an exchange of energy and information at the molecule to molecule level. This is a fantastic way for us to communicate. And we're fans of Zoom, and that's how you can do your intro talk. To learn this, we need to be in person. So you come along, you receive your mantra, you learn how to use it on the first day. And then the next day, you learn how you're going to fit meditation into your life, when and where, and how do I fit it around exercise. And people are always worried about my coffee. You're not going to take away my coffee. I can still drink coffee, right? Yeah, it's all fine. On the third day, the next day, we look at the effect of meditation on consciousness and the nervous system. What's happening in the mind? Therefore, what's going on in the body? How is meditation getting in and unwinding the stress, the impressions, the distortions that we have all taken on over the years and held on to? Meditation purifies this out quite quickly. And when you understand the mechanics of how Vedic meditation works, first it's interesting. You remember that I remember you being so fascinated by this day and sort of the explanation at the mechanical scientific level of why this is working. People really love it. And then you come for a fourth session the next day. So 4 days in a row, it's just 2 hours each day. On the final day, you look at the road ahead. What's going to happen as I continue to do this? What will be my personal flex as a meditator? And that is calm and clarity and creativity and a healthier body and a better functioning brain that leads to more creativity and more intellectual capacity and better memory. My reaction time gets faster. Younger. I become a more available person to the people around me. Ultimately, this comes to relationships.
Yeah, and I just want to pick up on something that, because often people will come to us and they'll say, I don't have time to meditate, man. Like, my life is maxed out. How am I going to sit down and close my eyes? So what we do is it's 20 minutes in the morning. So normally I say to people, right, your day doesn't start until you've got your meditation done. Get it in early and then get on with your day. So you go into the day taking all that energy and all that clarity into your day. And then late afternoon, early evening, we sit down and we do another 20-minute meditation. And that might be on your commute. Or it could be, I was just talking to one of my clients yesterday. He works in the city. He's got 2 really big churches near him, near the office. And he'll go to either one. He can sit down there in the church and he does his meditation. He went down there yesterday at 3:30 in the afternoon, took a break from work, did his meditation, came back up to the office, raring to go. We just get really clever at finding these places, and we can do it anywhere, anywhere that you can safely sit down and close the eyes. You don't need to be on the special pink cushion in the class, with gongs going, or you don't need an internet connection. You don't need anything. We want to get you self-sufficient, and you've got a tool for life. And so this idea that I'm too busy to meditate, it's what everybody reports once they learn this, is they actually feel like they have more time, because they're so much more clear-headed, they're so much more able to focus on the things that matter, they're more efficient. It was so much my experience. I was getting obsessed about stuff that shouldn't even have been on my to-do list. And then once I learned to meditate, I was like getting other people to do that bit, and I was able to get onto the stuff that actually was relevant for me. And it just shifts those priorities, and you feel like you have more time. And this is a big thing, because how we use our time is critically important. You have 30 minutes, you do not get that 30 minutes back. So what are you doing that's going to give you a return on that investment? And 20 minutes twice a day ain't that long. That's a bit of faffing around on Instagram, and 20 minutes is gone. What are you doing with your time? This is a very clear investment.
I meditate straight away in the day, and then I do another one at about 3 o'clock when I want that kick. I'm like, oh, brain's quite busy, like, ooh, productivity starting to decline. I get that hit, and I'm like, wow, it just comes. But there's two interesting facts that you'll know the specifics on. One was the comparative rest you get compared to sleep, like for like time wise, and then the second was the change in your brain structure. Can we just go into those two data points?
One of the best ways to measure physiological rest is to look at how much fuel you are burning. If the body's resting, you need less fuel. And the main fuel of the body is oxygen. So if you are resting less or resting more deeply, then your oxygen metabolism goes down. You don't need to burn so much fuel. We're all sitting in chairs. If we call just sitting in a chair calmly the 0 point, then after you have been deeply asleep for 5, 6, 7 hours, your oxygen metabolism drops by 10, maybe 15%. You sit down and practice Vedic meditation for just a few minutes, and that oxygen metabolism level drops to 20%, 30%, even a 50% drop. So if we do the maths, that's 2 to 5 times deeper rest than sleep for that 20 minutes. And that is so powerful. And I'm Arthur, I'm sure you feel this yourself, that you get up in the morning and you got up early and you're a little bit tired and you meditate and you come out and you feel completely different. Whereas you can kind of feel that sense of, if I had slept another hour, I'm not sure it would have done it for me. And you people, everyone knows this, that you sleep in on the weekend and you get up late and you feel more groggy, you feel heavy, you feel lethargic. Whereas you have a late Friday night, you get up still early on Saturday morning, you meditate, you feel better. It really makes a huge difference. And that is the physiological rest that's happening.
There were so many great anecdotes during the course, but one I really liked and resonates is you talked about this concept when one smiles at people on the street, it actually comes, it's actually an authentic smile, which I've seen that change, which is, it's quite bizarre. It's completely true. And then the other one, I don't know, it's just such a night and day difference. One thinks, oh yeah, I'm going to get 25 minutes less sleep. No, that doesn't make sense. Why would I do that? And I explain to friends, I'm like, no, because if I do it, then as soon as I finish, like, I'm there. So does this comment, the idea that the better we are in ourselves, the more we can give to other people, right? If we meditate, we can give more to other people. It's very linked to what this gives you. Does that resonate with you?
Well, maybe you could talk about because you were asking before about the effect on the brain, and there is this movement from the back of the brain, the stress center, to a higher level of functioning.
And that affects every thought you have and every behavior that comes from that. So how we are in the world is a function of how conscious we are. You're semi-conscious, then you're going to be less effective. So let's talk about it from the point of view of how much, what's your quantity of available consciousness or awareness. And what we can get a very clear read on is how Vedic meditation changes that executive processing function that we have. It's our higher executive processing center in the brain as human beings, which has a cascading effect into the power of our thinking, and as a consequence of that, the repertoire of behaviors that we can come up with. So when we say Vedic meditation changes your brain, we can measure that. That's not just woo. So we can hook somebody up to an electroencephalogram, which is an EEG, and it's looking at electrical brainwave activity. So it's looking at types of brainwaves, it's looking at frequency, and it's importantly, it's looking at coherence in the brain. This is a really important point. What we see on somebody sitting there for 20 minutes meditating is that we will see these moments of peak coherence. And what that is demonstrated as is coherence between the left and the right cerebral hemispheres. So they're talking to each other in a very coordinated way. This has a big impact in terms of your creativity and your potential to come up with good solutions, good ideas, and insights to problems. Very important. The other thing that we'll see is a lot of activity moving from the back of the brain coherently through into this prefrontal cortex, which is known as the CEO of the brain. It is your higher executive processing center. Now, what the research shows is that when you're tired and when you're stressed, your prefrontal cortex goes offline, shuts down. And then we're into the back part of the brain, which is not good when it comes to making good decisions, because then you're being driven by anger and fear and all those base emotions that are actually not that helpful to us. We are rewiring the brain and we are expanding the dendritic web, those interneuronal connections. So as a consequence, my thinking is being upgraded, and as a consequence, the behaviors that come from those thoughts are upgraded. And who you are and how you are is what everybody experiences when you go out in the world. And if you're going out into the world and you're tired and you're a bit stressy and you don't feel well and you're in kind of me consciousness, how the heck do I get through this day kind of mode, then that is not a generous place to be. That's not what we want to be dumping into the atmosphere and onto our friends and our family. When we take care of ourselves and we upgrade our consciousness state, we clear out the stress reactivity out of our system, and we've got energy and we can hold the present moment, we can listen, we can be there in that moment of reality and not going over old ground or speculating about what might be around the corner, but actually present, then that transforms every interaction that you have. And as I alluded to before, there is plenty of evidence in our world today that we need to get better at this as a people, as humans. There's an opportunity for more effective interactions. Hard to do that, no matter how many self-help books you've read or how many podcasts you've listened to. You might know that there are certain ways that are optimal to behave, but when you're in a moment of stress reactivity, that all goes out the window. You're having a stress reaction. And we might afterwards think, oh God, why did I say that? Or we berate ourselves, but it was a moment of stress reactivity. Meditation's changing that because it's clearing out that stress from the system. So then I can go into these interactions, and that is what is having the biggest impact on the people around us if I go into a situation in good shape, as opposed to going into a situation and I'm not fully present.
And what was the fact about the frontal lobe changing?
So this prefrontal cortex lights up in Vedic meditators. It gets very active. It's a very holistic brain signature, and there's a lot of coherence in the brain. We'll see a lot of alpha brainwave activity. This is good in terms of positioning us into a state of restful alertness. The body's deeply rested, and yet the brain is highly alert and very clear and coherent. We want that prefrontal cortex. This is the higher executive processing center of the human brain, and we don't want that to be offline. And so what meditation is doing is it's enlivening that in the process of meditation. But here's the interesting thing, because your brain is malleable. We have this function called neuroplasticity. And a lot of research on this, what you do with your brain changes it. It is not a rock. It's not a static thing. It's constantly adapting to the functionality that it is experiencing. So you learn a musical instrument and you start learning French, or you're asking those interneuronal connections to spread, to form and develop. What you do with your brain changes it. So when you look at the longitudinal studies on Vedic meditators, what we see is that the brain normalizes. That optimized state that I was describing that's happening in meditation starts to become the new normal. And so this plays out as improvements in memory and concentration and creativity and all of these metrics by which we look at how well are we performing mentally. What's causing that? You are literally changing the brain chemistry. You're increasing the oxygen flow. That's very interesting. What's happening in meditation, the oxygen flow to the brain, increasing significantly. So all of these things are happening automatically. It's not that I'm doing anything. I'm simply sitting on the tube with my eyes closed and my bag on my lap, and I'm thinking this meaningless sound for 20 minutes. And then I come out nice and slowly. Job done. From the outset, doesn't look like much, just like somebody sitting there with their eyes closed. But actually what's going on beneath the surface is positively transformational.
Wasn't there a study that showed that neuroplasticity increased after 6 weeks?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But what percentage was that again?
This was a study, it was a very interesting study because it was done on newbies, like people that had just learned to meditate. And they were young people. And there were a group of students who had learned to meditate when they were very young, 10, 11, 12. So they'd been meditating for a while. And then there was a group of new meditators who had just learned in a few weeks. I think it was about 3 to 4 weeks, actually. They were in their late teens. So they were all the same age, but one half had been meditating since they were 10 or 11, and the others had only been meditating for about 3 or 4 weeks. So this brain signature that I was describing was evident in both groups. Very interesting. This comes back to what we were saying. There's no ramping up period with Vedic meditation. It's not like I have to do it for a few months and then I've worked my way up to this optimized state. It is happening from the get-go. And we could see that in the results of this study. New meditators were experiencing these moments of peak coherence just like the meditators who'd been meditating for many years. But then something interesting happened. They kept the recording and measuring equipment going, and they told both groups to stop meditating and just sit there with their eyes closed. And what they saw with the long-term meditators was a continuation, a prolonging of that optimized brain signature even after meditation. It was there. The newbies, they just went back to pre-meditation, more chaotic brain functioning. But it was interesting to see the longitudinal effect in those students who'd been meditating for a long time.
Fascinating. And this life's complex, right? I mean, there's so many compartments that joy comes from, opportunities come from, challenges come from. There must be, I mean, we know so many different people who do your course. Please, could you share some of those different stories and the quirky impacts? Because there are so many of them. I know it would be
We could do a whole podcast just on that.
A great thing to do. We do have a podcast about
Michael's
that.
podcast.
I have a podcast
Indeed.
called Speaking of Meditation, which is conversations.
Yeah,
let's have you on it. It would be great. It's really interesting conversations with fascinating people who are out there in the world meditating, the impact that it has had on them. And there's one story about a woman named Lily who learned when she was 13 and then came back and did the adult course. She did a kids course, then she did the adult course when she was doing her A levels. And then she went to Cambridge and then graduated and was in the working world. And what her life is like as a meditator from the beginning and in a family of meditators. And her report is, I don't know what it would be like to not meditate, except that I see in my peer group a very different experience of the world. And those people who made fun of me at boarding school for meditating now in our mid-20s are coming to me and saying, how do I learn? Because you've got something going on I feel that I really need. And I love that. That's such an unusual situation that someone learns that young and is really surrounded by meditators. For most people, they're the one in their family, in their social group. And there is such a range of reasons that people learn.
I'm thinking of one woman who she learned, and she was not in a good place when I met her. I was doing some work on Harley Street with an oncology center, and she had been going through cancer treatment. Very high-powered lawyer, very successful, but very out of balance, and nervous system had been strained for a long time. And she got through that treatment program, and in that she learned to meditate. And she has 2 young girls, and she could see the impact of it through what was being reflected back to her and her behavior and the reactions of her children. She's, I'm no longer shouty mummy. I'm actually nice mummy. And if I don't meditate, my kids are going to tell me, Mum, you need to meditate. Because there is direct feedback. Boom. When you do this, you're a different human. And I like that meditating one better, thanks. But she said, and I think about it also in terms of this, how we're dealing with demands. It's a very interesting factor that meditators will describe in different ways. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but we did a program of teaching teachers. And I had one young guy who worked with relatively young children. And he said what he was noticing with meditation was that beforehand, if a child had been acting up or dysregulated, he said, I would just be in there and I'd be reacting and I'd be zeroing in really fast. And he said, what was interesting with meditation, and this, by the way, was only after a few weeks of meditation, he said, I feel like there's more space between me and the child. And he said, I don't know what it is. I can't put a time on it. It might be like, a tenth of a second. There's some spaciousness, some buffer zone between me and the stressor. And what that was doing was it's allowing him to meet the stressor in a very different way. And as a consequence, he wasn't rushing the situation. He wasn't as reactive. He wasn't as narrow. He was actually had the space to meet that moment in a very different way, in a healthier way for him and for that child. And it's a very interesting concept when we think about the speed with which the world is moving and the speed with which information is coming to us and what that is asking of us, and to just build in a little bit more buffer, how that reflects in the response that we come up with.
There's a film, I'm forgetting the name, but I think it's called Limitless. It's got Bradley Cooper. It's about this pill that's invented. And in the film, you watch him go from this someone who's completely uninspired, he's failed writer, and to taking this pill, suddenly he can think like a genius. But he has more time in these moments of chaos where he's able to think for a few more seconds and just navigate a lot of different information and just speak with such transparency. And it's funny, I noticed in just small moments, nothing quite like that, but there is a sense of like just having a bit more control over situations and being more transparent with people, communication, and getting more from moments and people, everything. And can you think of more quirky stories of someone? Because one thing's really interesting. I remember the last session. Michael, don't make any big life decisions because things are going to come to you and you're going to have clarity on things. Like, talk to us about those changes you've heard or.
Yes. I mean, we would always say when you learn to meditate, because so much change is happening in those early days, and there's some release of old sadness or old anxiety. I remember a week after I learned to meditate, sort of these bubbles of anxiety were coming up that were quite strong, and I was functional. It's not like it brought my life to a halt, but there was stuff moving out of the system that was important and for the good. And I wouldn't have wanted to make a big life decision based on that feeling that I was having in the moment. Somebody has carried a lot of anger around and they learn to meditate and they start releasing that old irritation. And then on Tuesday, they get an email from their line manager and they fire something back. It's because of you, my whole life is miserable. And then come Friday, that anger has started to clear out and they're thinking, oh, quitting my job was a rash decision. Paycheck, that was an okay thing to have.
Yeah.
And this is why I told you and the people on the course, just delay. Don't go off your birth control. Don't quit your job. Don't decide to move country. Just
Don't get a pet.
Don't get a pet. This is a big life decision.
But I think you do notice those changes. And I was thinking about one woman she's a photographer and her whole thing is about what she sees in the world. And she's turned up on day 4 and she's, God, there's a place on my street. She's been living there for years. I've never seen it before. She's been walking past it for day after day. And she's a visual person. And then she was like, oh, I'm seeing all this stuff. Or I have one other guy, he has these amazing eyes. You were talking about eyes.
Oh, yeah.
And he gets on the train and he's like, I'm just making eye contact with everybody. And one of the women in the thing, yeah, you got amazing eyes, indeed. But he's like, I'm just looking at people, I'm smiling, and they're talking back to me. And he's having all of these moments of interaction that when you're blinkered, you don't see that over there, or you don't connect with these people because you're just like hell-bent on getting there and the world is passing you by or you're passing it by and you're not awake to what's going on. And I think that richness of life gets cut out of the picture because I'm busy, let's go. And I think that's something that people really talk about a lot, that what their senses are delivering to them. And that can change lots of things. It can change what they eat. It can change how much they drink. I had a guy come in on day 4 of my course and he goes, yeah, I know. I think I'm noticing I'm drinking less coffee. And I was like, oh, okay. And he's, yeah, I've only had cups. This was at 10:30 on a Sunday morning. I was like, oh, okay. How many would you normally have had? He's Scandinavian, and when they make coffee, they make these big pots of coffee and it just glows. And he said, 5 or 6 by now. And he'd just be drinking it like water. But he hadn't been because there was more conscious awareness on the decisions that he was making and the choices he was making. It shifts that because you're more present, you're more awake, you're not clouded. The nervous system isn't foggy and noisy and distracted.
It does come back to meditation delivers what you need. And you were asking in the beginning, what do you get from it? That is so different for different people.
Yeah.
I'm sure I told a story on your course about a couple who learned, and the woman was the one who initiated them coming along, and she was super stressy and angry and worked up. And we saw her maybe 6 weeks later after they had been practicing, and she was so calm and clear. She just walked in the room and you could feel how different she was, and she was really reporting that. Whereas her husband was like this super laid-back dude, like totally relaxed. And for him, that was actually his stress response. He wasn't actually that relaxed. What he really was a little standoffish and a little resistant and a little withdrawn.
Stuck.
He was stuck. And when he learned to meditate, he got unstuck. and he started exercising, and he quit this terrible day job he had, and he was a musician. He formed a new band, and he and his wife were pregnant within 6 months. He freed up energy and was able to step up and step into life in a really different way. And I think this is an important thing, because people think, well, meditation is going to turn me into some spaced out bliss bunny. And I had a woman who worked in tech, super dynamic, super successful. And she learned, and I saw her 6 months later, and she said, I was worried meditation would cause me to lose my edge. What I lost was my edginess. And I thought it was so beautifully said. She was still dynamic and she was still on top of it. She just wasn't as sharp unnecessarily as she needed to be. But actually, she was getting more done.
I remember you talking about this very young girl, I think she was about 15, who did the course. And she was like, oh, I'm just annoyed that I didn't do it earlier.
Wishes they did it earlier.
Yeah,
Everyone becomes.
and then there was someone who works in a bank who quietly goes to a room. I think have a post-it note saying leave me alone. I'm meditating.
People find their way to get it done. It's but that's the good thing. You can do it anywhere.
One thing that strikes me is, like, we've touched on it, but the world's, there's a lot of things happening every day on a macro level, and what we know is that what happens on a micro level adds up to the macro. So if we think about, and you talked about different people need different things from these sort of things. Some people are struggling to cope with a new job. It's very demanding, but they're doing very well in the grand scheme of things. Other people are just, they're fighting for their every day is just a struggle, which makes me think about the homeless and access to the course. Do you, and it's interesting, you have different cultures that embrace things like meditation, and it's in schools, etc., etc. What should we be doing if a government minister, for example, listens to this? What would you be? How would you be trying to get more people to do this?
Oh, gosh.
We would love to be.
I mean, if you know those people, put us in touch, because we've gone in. It's a tricky thing because people need to want to learn. You can't go in and impose on a population that you think would benefit from meditation and make them do it. It just doesn't work, of course. People have to seek it out. And we've gone into a couple of state schools in London and made that available to the teachers. Because if teachers are meditating, then, as with Jillian's example, they are different with the kids, and that has a spreading effect. And we try to work from both levels. Can you get more people meditating generally? And we're doing what we can there. But also, can you get people meditating who have a broader impact, who are influencing more people, who have contact with a lot of people? Because not everyone is going to meditate. And if enough people and people who are in contact with other people are doing it, that does have a spreading effect, and it is changing the world.
God, we've touched on so much today, and really grateful for your time and all the stories, and we'll see where this goes. We've covered so many great things, apart from your new book.
Yes, the new book, Jillian's new book. This is fantastic.
Yes, this is my new book. I did a talk at the Do Lectures. The Do Lectures are great. What is it?
It's like TED in a barn in Wales.
It's set up by Claire and David Hyatt, and they're great people who have this annual event called the Do Lectures, and people come from all over the world. And I got asked to speak at that in 2023, and off the back of that they have a publishing arm, the Do Books, and there are now about 42 titles, and so mine is coming out in April. It is Do Reset, and it's all about the power of meditation as a daily reset to bring us back to homeostatic balance, to come back to ourselves, and to be able to deal with the demands of this demanding world that we're in, and the importance of that. So it's not going to teach somebody to meditate. You need to come along and learn, but I want it to inspire people. And this pocket book format it's good because it's not long, it's easy to get into, but it'll give people a little insight into the science of this settled inner state, and all the benefits that flow from that. Yeah.
That comes out
And
the 3rd of April. Go to your independent bookstore
I think
and
you can
pre-order
pre-order.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, and just the sort of last note really is thinking about, some people, oh, is this for people who are really struggling, or is this for people who are already who are doing so well and they just want more? And when people ask me, "Oh, but how do you have the time?" I'm like, "No, but I want to do it. It's just like getting an extra 2 hours sleep. Like it just doesn't make sense to not have that. And when it ends up being an extra 25 minutes of your day, given you just wake up earlier for the first one, it doesn't make sense to not do that. The time thing is just such a big pushback from people. Can you think of someone who's incredibly busy, who's just and the way they explain that navigation?
I taught a film director in New York, and he was a very committed meditator for a couple of years. He had a full-on life, family, and a busy career. And then he got a particularly big film that kind of took over his life, and his meditation fell away for a few months while he was on set. And as soon as the film wrapped, he emailed me and he said, listen, I need a private session. We need to sit down together. I need you to get me back on track. I don't have time to not meditate. And I thought it really encapsulated, yes, it is an investment of time. And that investment means you are healthier and happier and your brain works better and you get more done and you get along better with people. Do you not have time for those things? I'm so busy that I'm willing to be sick and old and less intelligent and get less done and not get on with the people that I care about. That's what I have time for. That just does not make sense. It just does not make sense. Yes, it is an investment. And pull out your phone and open the screen time app and you'll see how much time you have. Because there's an extra hour in there for sure of just fiddling around on the screen or whatever it is that you do with your time. It is possible to carve it out. It will give you more time. The return on that investment is multiples.